Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are getting into the Sinners movie review. But if you guys are new to my page, welcome. I am the Demiotis. This movie was such it has so many different layers to it, very deeply spiritual. So if you're not a spiritual person, you may be confused when you get into this movie. A lot of stuff may go over your head, but I'm going to try to break down as much as I can for you. This movie also had a lot of racial stuff, history within the Black, white, and Asian community, as well as I don't want to necessarily say Native American, but it kind of ties in some of the core minorities when it comes to American history. Even though later on in the movie there are different cultures and stuff we do, they take bits and pieces from. Ryan Coogler takes bits and pieces from, and just the social issues and breakdowns that, if you're not really paying attention to what's going on within American history from the past, and not just American history, just world history, and currently right now what's happening in the United States right now, since there's an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm going to break down as much as I can. If you did not watch this movie, uh, do not be in here because I will be explaining some of the scenes. I'll try not to go so much in detail with it because I really want to educate on the different layers and different scenes of, so I could point out these different things that I pointed out in this movie for you guys. So, and bear with me too. I do want to give a full disclaimer. I saw the movie yesterday. That does not mean I memorized all the character names. So there will be points in times where I am going to be looking up what character name is what. Yes, but before we dig deep into it, I want to say this is definitely a movie that you could see it multiple times, especially if you're a super spiritual person. Oh my God. There's so many hidden messages in here. This is a movie where you see it every time you see it, you're gonna see something different. I am definitely going to see it a second time because I'm pretty sure I'm going to miss some things in this breakdown because my memory is not the greatest, but I'm really surprised I remembered a lot of the movie though too. But also too, it's just my type of genre, and I love when people bring up different cultures and folklore and all of that. So, and it just had the right combination of everything. Super, super proud of the entire cast. Super, super proud of the production of the movie. Super proud of the overall project of the movie. I'll give my rating at the end of this, and let's dig into it. Okay. So actually, what I need to do is, I didn't think this through. Okay, give me one second. I gotta pull my notes up because I literally I made notes for you guys so I could have. I try to break it down as clearly as I can when it came to the scenes, meaning the production of, not production, meaning the timing of the movie. So I do want to give a disclaimer because there are some points that I am going to talk about where I think I put it in the wrong section of the movie. Meaning, I think there's a part I'm going to talk about right now in the first part of the movie that's actually like in the middle-ish, endish of the movie. So bear with me. The meaning of this review is really to break down if you really want to know the spiritual, racial, and social economic issues from the past all the way up until now, period. So don't crucify me. All right. Now, if you guys have not seen the movie, I recommend you see it. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the I don't even know why I'm having a tongue twister right now. IMDb, okay? I don't want to hold on. Which one am I showing you guys? Because I have two up right now. Okay. This one? Sorry, I'm having a delay on my thing, so I don't know which one you guys are. Okay, you guys are watching this one. Okay, so anyways, this movie is classified as a drama, supernatural horror, vampire horror, action, drama horror, thriller. I thought it was amazing. Um, it's rated R and it's 2 hours and 17 minutes. I didn't feel like it was a super long movie. This is a movie that kept me on the edge of the seats. because there was just so much meaning in it. I was just so intrigued. And when I was sitting in the movie theaters, mind you, currently I'm living in Oregon, so I'm already a minority here. There were certain things that happened in this movie. I was like, oh, these people are not going to get it. And they did not get it in the movie theaters. There was a lot of laughter in the movie theaters, things that I felt like was very serious to the African American community and even to the white community on what their ancestors have done to the African community and still continue to do to the African community. They were kind of silent on and really wasn't saying anything in the movie theaters. I just found that kind of, I'm not going to say entertaining. I just found that kind of interesting. And I'm not going to go too detail into that. But anyways, I'm going to actually respect the movie and not play the trailer. Um, yeah, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to show the still photos though. Give me one second. Why is this showing up here? Okay, so if you guys don't know the main characters, you have Smoke and Stack. So Stack is the twin. So they're twins. Stack is the twin in the red, and then Smoke is the twin in the blue. If you, this is kind of starting the movie off in a sense. This is not the beginning of the scene, but since we're on here and I saw this image, I'll just talk about the twins. Twins are spiritually not only in the physical form, but they say like twins are intertwined. There's a thing where it doesn't matter if a twin is living in the same setting as a twin. Sometimes, like even if a twin, let's say for instance, they're across the United States. Let's just say there's several, they went on a trip, they're on a vacation. When they are in danger, the other twin is able to sense them. So there's kind of like this spiritual connection. And if you do research and you look at different cultures, you look at different countries, and they talk about and just going into like different cultural practices, you know, like with Native Americans, Africans, Mayans, Chinese, Asian cultures, they all have some sort of story about how twins have a connection within the spiritual realm and the physical realm, and they have a deep bond. So even though they have two bodies, their soul is connected not only in the physical realm, but in the spiritual realm. And if you want to go a little bit deeper with twins too, twins are associated with duality and balance. They're associated with like completeness and oneness, divinity and healing, and also deviation and foresight and interconnectedness. And when you know about different cultures and you study different cultures, you would know that twins were kind of used. Sometimes they would say they could see the veil between the spirit realm and, you know, our earthly realm, which is right now how you're seeing me right now. But there is a spirit realm, that they are able to connect with that easier than other people. But then you also have other people too that, you know, they have gifts and things like that. I've said this before. I'm able to cross between those worlds too. However, um, they are connected with that. So I just want to bring that up there. So I thought it was very interesting how the main characters are twins, and I wanted to bring that spiritual component to it. So that's one of it. But when you start the beginning of the movie, they go on talking about, you know, like kind of like African American culture, and I forgot the other culture. They're talking about, you hear African drums, you hear African folklore. So in the African community and even in African, well, I'm talking about like African, like from Africa, and their culture as well. They have folklore, they have tales, they have oral stories, and this happens in a lot of ancient cultures. And when you dig into civilizations, when their teachings were not burned by Europeans and other outside races, for various reasons, we're not going to go too detail into that. But if you look into almost every minority group, their ancient teachings and practices have been barred as being evil and corrupt and, you know, they just burned and destroyed and essayed and killed and anything like that, or have forbidden them to practice their certain religious beliefs. They've been forced to convert into Christianity or to whatever, whoever try to conquer their land, whatever their religion is at their time. I'm not going to go into detail with all the different races or countries that conquer different places, but um the movie starts off with that, so I was automatically excited. I'm like, ooh, because I'm like really into that kind of stuff. So it starts off with that. It gives you that tone of kind of like how the overall theme and of the movie is going to be, how it's going to be based off of history. It's going to be based off of folklore. It's going to be based off of like magical mythic things, mythologies, and things of that sort. So if you're not into that kind of thing, don't watch this because it heavily is influenced by that. So it goes off on that standpoint. Then you go off and see how you're in Mississippi, you're in the deep South. And if you know American history and you know about the South, you know you're not going to know about the South if it wasn't for cotton, and if it wasn't for slavery, and if it wasn't for the evolution of African Americans gaining their freedom and taking the steps to kind of like where we are right now. But they're not talking about in today's time. They're talking about their time, which slavery wasn't that far long off, because they talked about sharecropping. Okay. And since we're talking about that, since I brought that up, let's go ahead and talk about that. So in this movie, I thought it was interesting because in the beginning, you see the Black aspect of the remnants of slavery. Okay. You see the remnants of slavery. Hold on. Let me remove this because I feel like you need to see my face during this. You see the remnants of slavery. So there is a part where, now you better calm down, Midnight. Sorry guys, the cat, he's getting a little rowdy. Anyway, so you have the remnants of slavery. So you see the Black component, the African American component, kind of the remnants of it. So they're still working the field. So you could tell that the African Americans were freed, but they're still living in, I'm not going to say the slave quarters, but you know, their housing isn't the best. You know, you could tell they built it themselves. The boy walks in. The boy walks in, and okay, he's trying to sit down. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to see if he's trying to turn up or not, because I might have to pause. You need to lay down, sir. So he's trying to turn up. Anyways, so he's walking through the quarter saying, you know, it's time for you guys to get up and everything like that. The children is laying on the floor on a mattress. You could tell they don't have a lot of stuff. I'm not sure if it was before this scene or after the scene, but is his name Sammy? Yeah, Sammy. He's actually picking in the cotton field. And they have a quota, which is, you know, all slaves had a quota. And even after slavery, if you didn't have anywhere to go and you stayed working for your master after, you know, the United States freed you, a lot of them didn't have a lot of places to go, so they stayed on the plantations and they worked the fields that they were enslaved on, and they were considered sharecroppers. And what's interesting is the quota term is, because even when you were a slave you had a quota. The only difference is you had physical punishment, or they'll take away your food, or various other things. They'll do stuff to your children, your wife, whatever, or separate you from your children, your wife, you know, just very gruesome, hateful things. When you really dig into slavery and all the different components that was inflicted on African Americans by white Americans, but others as well, because white people weren't the only ones, they were just the majority. However, um, so they have the quota. So that's just to explain the slavery and like uh the slavery breakdown of it. So you know the history of it, okay? Now, going a little bit deeper than that. Then you have the white side of the sharecropping. You have the white side of the sharecropping. So, which is a correlation, and this is where I'm going to tie into today's time and like leading up all the way from slavery into today's time. You know, wealthy people in America has always had the upper hand here in America. And what I find very interesting is when you see the contrast from the black sharecroppers and the white sharecroppers that's in the movie, which you'll see a little bit later on. Is it a little bit later on? I can't remember. I don't know. I'll explain once I'm done with this point. The white sharecroppers were just as poor as the black sharecroppers. However, you could tell there was a difference between the white sharecroppers and the black sharecroppers. So the black sharecroppers were poorer than the white sharecroppers, although the correlation is they both were poor. They both were being inflicted by the wealthy. They both were inflicted by the wealthy, which is something that I don't understand in today's time why poor white America has this hatred towards African Americans. Because when you look at it in society, your own people has never supported you. All their policies, all of their rules, all of their wages, all of their opportunities, it never gets afforded to them. How they get their support is through the minority laws, it's through the democratic laws. Now, I'm not going to say all Republican laws are bad, but they get all of that due to us fighting, the minorities fighting. So that's what I don't understand, the racism and how they just don't get on board when it comes to, they don't see how identical they are to minorities, the lower class white Americans here in America. And some, if I say that to them, if I'm in an area that's unsafe, they probably would me, you know what I'm saying? But it's the truth, because you see in a scene where the vampire, which his name is, what is that man name? It starts with an R, Remrick, which he comes into the sharecroppers. He's running away from the Native Americans. Okay. So let's move on from that. But I'm still on that same point. So he's running away from the Native Americans. Okay. So the Native Americans are chasing him. You can see he's kind of burned. He's kind of like burned up or whatever. So I don't know what they were doing to him. I guess they were trying to get him, child. Okay. And he ended up going into the sharecroppers. Mind you, they were racist, because when the white guy, he was white and he was a vampire, they didn't know at the time he was a vampire. He knocked on the door and he was saying like he needed help, blah blah blah, and he was conveniently trying to gear them into inviting him into the house. So he eventually got invited into the house by the husband and the wife. And the Native Americans, they had said, mind you, they didn't see the guy coming in there, but they figured he came that way because they were chasing him. They were on horses and all of this. So he had came off the horse. The woman comes out with the shotgun. Mind you, the vampire and the guy, mind you, he's looking like a human. He's not looking like a vampire or anything. So the wife comes out with a shotgun, and the Native American is like asking, did a man come your way? If you invited him in, you're in great trouble. You don't, he's not what he appears to be. So they're not trying to say exactly what he is, but they're basically saying, like, warning her, like, hey, you need to let him go. And she's basically like, nope, 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 nope. So the Native American is like, well, basically, God be with you. So, what I want to point out with the Native Americans is how this kind of set the tone. And this is another part where I say I'm probably going to be jumping all over the place. So, bear with me with the chronologically of the breakdown. But, anyways, this is where Native Americans, to me, I felt like Ryan Coogler did a really good job. Didn't go so much in detail into Native Americans, but if you know anything about supernatural world and things like that, Native Americans and vampires, folklore, and things like that, they have always kind of been intertwined, because if you know anything about Native Americans and you know anything about their culture, you know about wolves and werewolves and, transforming and being triggered to transform into a werewolf because of vampires is near and things like that, because you're protecting your tribe, you're protecting earth and things like that, because vampires are seen to be unearthly, and they attack, your human, your animals and things like that. So or your tribe members. So if you know anything about that, then you would get the sense of why they were chasing him. And also, he kind of Ryan Coogler kind of gave the Native American community the respect that they deserve when it comes to the supernatural in that regard. Because when you think about it, when you think about a lot of vampire movies that have been produced and things like that, they hardly ever really go into great detail about well, there are some that went into great detail about vampires, the connections between vampires and Native Americans. But what I'm talking about is knowing how to, like unalive them, how spiritually vampires are, like how spiritual connected they are as well, and how they could disrupt the ecosystem and how they go into the ecosystem and how they actually influence or trigger something in the Native American bloodline to want to defend, the native land and the people and things of that sort. So, anyways, it was just a glimpse on that, and I just felt proud, having Native American blood in me, running through me. I was just like, oh, thank you. Even though it was a small clips, it was more so like, to me, I got it. I got the picture. I was like, okay, this is basically like a hats off to Native Americans, saying like Native Americans know what they're doing. But if you don't want to live the way of the land, then you got to deal with the consequences. And that kind of is a heavy part of Native American culture. You should be living the way of the land. You should be respecting the way of the land. You should be respecting the animals and the creatures in your environment in the way of the land. And also too, you should be respecting the spiritual realm as well. So when something is in your environment that shouldn't be there, you need to take action and you need to follow suit behind that. So anyways, the Native Americans did try to help them. They rejected it. Okay. Now, going back, because I don't want to miss this, going back to when the vampire went to the sharecroppers, the white sharecroppers, the vampire realized they had a KKK, uh, whatever their fucking ridiculous ass outfits they be wearing. It was sitting in the living room, and he was able to see that or whatever. Um, that was interesting, but we're going to later on see why that was interesting. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and kind of tying it into my commentary on why I don't understand why Americans just don't understand how they get played by their own people when it comes to, their way of life and their living and everything like that. You're still broke, you're still listening to your rich saviors, and they have yet to really do anything for you. I just don't understand why y'all don't get it. And if you know anything too about history as well, y'all used to enslave each other. So before y'all decided to enslave my people. So that's a whole nother story. Okay. Now let's go on to, okay, I talked about the sharecroppers, talked about okay, let's talk about, there is a lot of African spirituality in this movie. There's a lot of spirituality in general of different cultures. But there is a lot of African spirituality in this movie, from folklore to music to different spiritual practices in the movie, and talking about ancestors, honoring your ancestors, liberating your ancestors as well. And I want to also give my hats off to Ryan Coogler and the entire cast for respecting the African spirituality the ATRs. If you guys don't know what ATRs is, it's African traditional religions, and not demonizing it, because in America they demonize ATRs. They call it demonic. Even Christians, they call it demonic, and it is something that's kind of sticky in the African American community. But when you really start researching religion and African Americans and just Africans in general, we are very much earth people. We're very much in tuned with the with earth. And to me, in my personal opinion, African Americans and Native Americans, but we all came from Africa. Okay, so let's get that clear. However, what I want to say is, if we're going to talk about races, African Americans and Africans and Native Americans, to me, and this is not to offend anyone else, but to me, I just feel like are I don't want to offend anyone, because I really respect all cultures. I really do. I love all cultures. I love learning about different people. Um Actually, I'm not going to say that statement, because I don't want anyone to feel like they're less than. So I'm not going to say that statement. However, I'm just going to say that African Americans are very, very spiritual people. I don't feel like collectively we are spiritual. The ways of spirituality has become lost due to being colonized, and slavery, and personally being stripped from our identity. Compared to African Americans, have a hard time with their identity compared to Africans from Africa. And I'm just going to be 100% honest. And a lot of it is due to we don't know where our roots are. The Africans that are in Africa, they know where their tribe is. They know all of those things. Us, if our family did not keep up with a family tree, and didn't do the research, hire the investigators, a lot of us don't know our roots. Or it stops at a certain decade, and we can't get further information due to slavery and due to them taking different people from different areas all over the world and all over Africa, and putting us in the Caribbean, all over these different countries, and mixing up tribes. People can't talk to one another, and purposely doing that and bringing people here to America, um, and just completely shattering the core of what a human being is, essentially. So that's another whole other aspect, but I do wanted to give him the pat out on that, because I had to deprogram. This is my personal experience. I had to deprogram and stop thinking that being a Christian is the only way. And if I why can't I be Christian and spiritual at the same time? Why can't I be a Christian and be in a ATR at the same time? Why can't I do that? So and why is ATRs demonized? A lot of Christians like to argue, well, it's demonic. Some practices, they do sacrifices, y'all play with crystals, y'all do all of that, but the Bible, you guys read, there's altars in there, there's crystals, there's burning of incense, sages, all of that. There's sacrifices. There's literally stories of God saying, bring me meat, bring me wines, bring me that. What do you think that is? That's an offering. But hey, it's demonized. Anyway, that's, to me, I just feel like that's the white man philosophy, and that's why we're never going to get anywhere, because we are not connecting with our true ways. Um Now, moving on from there. Now, let's go on and I talked about the church, how important the church was in this movie. The church showed up in several scenes, from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the movie. And I think the church is very symbolic in this movie. And also, too, I don't know if you guys paid attention, if you watched the film. Hopefully you watched the film, because you shouldn't be watching this if you did. But hey, you might be one of those people that want to know what they're getting themselves into before they watch it. So the church, I don't know if you guys paid attention. It was triangular. When you first look at it, you would think it's a normal church. But I don't know if you guys paid attention from like the roof to like the very top of the church. It was like a little small triangle in there, and then it was a triangular church. So, anyways, I took that as, um, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but you also could take it from, three, the Trinity, all of that. Anyways, I'm just really into numerology and following all of that. So I thought that was another spiritual thing too. Now, the church is a huge staple in the African American community. Um, but it also in now this is my personal opinion. The church can also like tying into, how I said I don't understand how Christians could say like ATRs are demonic and things like that. The church was also inflicted upon the African community. Okay. When slaves they were not able to do their traditional, their practices. They were not doing Christian things. They were not, maybe some, because when you do your research, Christianity did start in Africa before it even came to them European countries. And that's a whole nother story. But I just want to plant that seed in someone that wants to be educated in that aspect. You will find that out. However, a lot of them were spiritual. A lot of them were doing a lot of earth practices, a lot of like root work, a lot of healing and things like that. So, anyways, the church community could be very a positive thing for the African community, and it could be a very crippling thing for the African community, African American community. Um, that's what I'm going to say on there. Like some people believe like they just going to devote their whole life to church. They're not going to do anything else. You're going to devote your life to God, and that's just what it's going to be. And that's where you kind of see with Sammy and his father in the film, because his father is a pastor or preacher or whatever, and he's kind of like trying to instill the way of like his path onto his son, which African Americans, stop doing that to your children. Let your children flourish, find out what they're good at. Your life should not be their life if they don't choose that path, and we as a community have to stop doing that, please. Learn to pour into your child when you see they're happy and you see that they are good at something other than what you do. Of course, anyone would want their child to be, a reflection of, wow, you're going to take the reins, you're going to do better than me. You like doing what I'm doing. Like that's an honor, but like sometimes that's not your child's path, and it's okay. And we need to stop demonizing and cutting our children off and everything like that, because that's not the way that, it's going. And I see that all too often. I've even experienced that shit. I'm currently going through that. So it's just one of those things in the African community that I just don't African American community that I just don't like at all. Well, actually it's kind of in the African community too. Okay, we talked about the church, the meaning of the twins. Okay, the church. The church I'm going to talk about it several times. Um so yeah, so that was the beginning portion of the movie. You get that feeling of that. Now, let's talk about the deal that the twins made with, I don't even know what his name is, but it was a white man. They wanted to purchase this old mill so they could set up shop and open up their all African American juke joint, to share their liquors and to have dance and libation, music, food, and have a good time, have something for them. So, um, this white man pulls up. He kind of is, honestly, when I saw him, I immediately thought about KKK. But the twins bought it up too. They walked around, they toured the location. They asked, one of the twins asked, what was on the floor? What was y'all cleaning up on the floor? And then the white guy spit on the floor. I'm just like, my God, can y'all just be anything less than human? But so he does that. Anyways, they go outside, and he gives them the money for the property. And he said, we're taking the property, and we're taking all the land here, and we bet not see any of your clan men come here either. And the guy the guy basically said, "Oh no, no, not gonna happen, not gonna happen." I knew that was fucking lies. He said, "Not gonna happen, not gonna happen, not gonna happen." All right, cool. I can't remember something else happened in that scene that rubbed me the wrong way. I don't remember what the hell it was between the white guy and the twins. But anyways, so that happened. After that, I believe that's when the twins. Ah, can't right now. Shit. Always want to call me. Hold on. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay. So, all right. That just threw me off. Um, twins, father. No, no, no. We're not gonna talk about that. Oh well, fuck it. You just talk to you on Ken. I'm just um hold on. Meaning of the twins. I already did that. Snake. Okay. So the twins then they go and they get the cousin Sammy. Sammy told the daddy he was going to play some music. The daddy was very relentless, did not want him to play no music and play that dang guitar. So the son got the guitar because the guitar, I guess, was in the front of the church or whatever. They were holding on to it. And the son is an amazing player, by the way. Beautiful voice. He tells his daddy, he says, "I'm done with my quota for today. I'm gonna be back for church. I'm going out. I'm gonna play some music, child." He basically is like being very like kind of like passive with his dad on because you could tell that his dad don't want him to really be playing music. And the daddy is like, you better be careful, you you dance with the devil one day, you're gonna bring him home. That's basically what he says. And he did bring the devil. So he goes off with the twins. The twins go to get, I guess, the booze that they had or whatever for the juke joint. And when they pulled the cloth back to camouflage, what they had in the truck, a snake was in there, was gonna bite them. A snake was in there. That was a bad omen. Okay. So that's another spiritual connection that I want to bring up to you guys. That was a bad omen. Okay. So in some cultures, seeing a snake is not a bad omen. But in this instance, we are going to talk about how it's a bad omen when you see a snake. Um, so typically when you see a snake, it's associated with fear or danger. Okay. Um, Often it's linked to transformation, change. It's a symbol of rebirth, as well, ability to shed the skin. Now, all of these meanings could apply to this movie because there is transformation in this movie. There is a major change that happens between the twins, and a transformation. And it is a bad omen because the juke joint people end up eventually getting all attacked by the damn vampires. And then the brother, what was it? Is it Stack? I think Stack. Yeah, Stack ends up getting turned out into a vampire. So I mean, all of that, the meaning of a snake ends up happening to the twins and everyone that was involved in this juke joint. Okay, so um yeah, so you have that scene. So then the twins split up. So you have Sammy and Stack. They go in a car. They go into town. Then you have Smoke. He goes visit his woman, his lover, and the child of their deceased child. He goes and visit her. So let's go and talk about I don't remember which scene was first, but it don't matter because it all gonna tie in together. So let's talk about when Smoke went to go see um when Smoke went to go see Annie, who was his woman, his love interest in the movie. He gets there. Her house is seemingly, it's like by herself. It's by I don't know if that's a weeping willow or not. So I don't want to say that a weeping willow. I just love weeping willow. When you spiritual, yeah, I don't know. That's one of the trees I'm kind of drawn to is weeping willows. But anyways, so it's this very bushy tree. He goes up to the graveside because the graveside, the baby graveside, is right kind of outside the house, and he's talking to the baby. Which again, that's kind of like a spiritual practice. You honor your ancestors. You bring something. He brings the baby white flowers, on there, which white is signifying purity, protection. Um, Things of that sort associated with divinity and things like that. So he puts the flowers on there. Then he goes into the house. In the house, I got super excited because I'm into all that spiritual stuff. She has a lot of like herbs. You see essence, incense, you see a lot of things, if you practice hoodoo, you see a lot of hoodoo stuff in her house. And she's saying all these different, he has a mojo bag as well, which, if you guys don't know what a mojo bag, it typically has some stuff inside of it that is due to protect you in some sort of way. And it's connected into the spiritual realm and into the earthly realm. And there is children that comes in there and they pay him for services or whatever. And he's talking about, he is the twin that's definitely about money. He's talking about, that money ain't gonna sell nowhere. And she said it's just fine or whatever. So he's trying to give her some money and she's like, no, I don't want it. Wherever you got your money from, you basically you done got it some a way I don't approve of, so I don't want it. So he goes on apologizing to her, how he left and how it was hard for him to leave, and that, he loves her and everything like that. You do see her doing some prayers, doing some spiritual protection for him in there. She also talks about how she prays over the siblings and things like that. And then he asks, how come none of this worked for our baby? And she says, I don't know why it didn't work for our baby. And I thought that might be something that go over people's head, is sometimes even when it is a child, the baby or the soul will do more of a service for you in the afterlife, like being a guide, a spirit guide for you, than in the spirit realm. I mean, not the spirit realm, the earthly realm with you. Okay. Sometimes that took me a while, and I literally just realized this not too long ago. And I was like, because I was looking at some situations, I was like, why are you like not here, and it just made me dig deep, and as I do more research and discover different things. So I do want to point that out. Then they make love in there, okay, whatever. So let's go to Stack. Now there was a lot of development with Stack and and Sammy. Okay, so they go out into the town. Actually, I forget a very important part. The Asian community. Let's stay on Smoke. Smoke actually goes into the community. I don't know if it was before this love scene or whatever. So, Smoke goes into the community. He goes into the community to his friend to go get a sign from them. And he finds this little girl to, basically be on the lookout. He says, honk the horn. He also teach her how to negotiate too. And he negotiates at a decent price for her or whatever. But then you see that same negotiation skills when he goes into the Asian house. So apparently the store, I mean, the Asian guy and the twin, they're friends. And he's saying, I'm opening up a juke joint, I need a sign, I need all of that. And you know, there's a daughter there too. So he talks to the daughter. The daughter brings out the parents. So then the wife comes over or whatever, and she's talking about how much it's going to cost you and everything of that sort. And they negotiate their price for it. But what I want to talk about here, which it applies to now, and what it applies to what has always happened. And this breakdown is, again, not to offend anyone, but I'm sure it probably will. Um, let's talk about the Asian community, child. So, and I love Asians. I really love Asians. I love all cultures, but I've most people that I've dated were Asian. So I just want to put that out there. So I have an even kind of deeper connection with them in a sense, and different types of Asians as well, not just one specific type. Now with the Asian community, this is kind of sticky. So I'm gonna try to be very as neutral-ish. Um, they're in the town, and you could tell it is a heavily African American town. And they have two stores. They have the store that shit, I always gotta remember the twins' name. Smoke, yeah, Smoke was in there, and then there was a store across the street or whatever. Now, there's a lot of parallels in here, okay? I'm really trying not to say things to irritate people, but however, though, truth is the truth. So, this is something that still happens in the African American community today. You see a lot of Asian stores in the African American community. And you see that even in those times, that time era that Centers is placed in, that they were present even in those eras and that it continued into 2025. So, and a prime example is, they have fish markets in the African American community, lots of beauty supplies in the African community. They'll do laundry mats in the African community. They have like cleaners in the African American communities. They are in our communities, and you could link that to, I did a little bit of research on this, although I found some discrepancies, and I feel like that is one of the things that, being a college graduate, you really learn how to research properly. Because when you look up the differences and the reasonings behind the African American community and the Asian community, they're saying, when you look it up, they say that there are myths. It was started by the African American community that Asians were giving more loans than African Americans, and they were discriminated against, and it was due to redlining. If you guys don't know what redlining is, that's the practice of denying loans to certain neighborhoods based on race. And it made it difficult for Black individuals and businesses to access capital. So this meant, while that banks might be open to working with Asian business owners, that they were often hesitant to lend to Black entrepreneurs in the same areas, even if they had a viable business plan. Um, Now, I think it's bullshit when I researched this, that they said that it was a myth. Okay, now I took it upon myself to dig a little bit deeper. Okay. And when I digged a little bit deeper, and I want you guys to see this, I'm going to actually show this because I don't want anyone talking about, I'm just blah, 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 blah. Oh, shit. Which one is it? Hold on. Okay. Here. So here is actual proof that that's a lie, because Temple University, actually, that was an article, they said that it was a myth, that there wasn't a discrepancy between Asians and Black or African Americans when it comes to accessing capital. That's a lie. So with the SB 7A loans in the year of 2023 fiscal year, there was 27.515 billion in SPA 7A funding. And 19% went to Asian owned businesses, and only 4.6% went to Black owned businesses. Now, with the SBA 504 loan, okay, with the, let's just say yeah, 6.4, let's just say 6.4, okay, billion and 504 funding, Asian owned businesses received 12.8% of these loans, while Black owned businesses received 3.6% of these loans. Now, numbers don't lie. Okay. So while that's why it pays a lot for you to do your research. Because if you don't do your research, you will believe anything anyone says. And that's the importance of actually, researching things. Because if I would have looked, and trust me, I looked pages and pages, they were saying, oh, it's a myth, it's a myth, it's a myth. But if you're African American and you're an entrepreneur, you know that's not a myth. If you go out into the communities, you will know that's not a myth. If you go out and talk to businesses or people that were lucky enough to get these business loans, how difficult it is to maintain it and pay it back, and how they are roadblocked by some Asian owners in their own communities. That is not a lie, and that's just the Black experience, and we need to be honest about that. And to me, that is a huge discrepancy. But this is what happens. And again, it's not necessarily 100% the Asian community fault. So I do want to point that out, that banks do this, and they deliberately do this because what? They want to. Hmm, I'm not gonna just paint it out that it's just white people that do that, because there's other races that discriminate against Black people as well. However, it's all designed by, going back to slavery, it's all designed for that, to keep the Black person down. Okay, period. And that's just what it is, and that's just the reality of it. So I thought I would bring some statistical facts into this as well. But this is something definitely in the community. So you would see, there kind of is there is unity, but it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's as solid as what it should be, between Asians and African Americans when it comes to unity, because a lot of African Americans feel that, not only just Asians, but a lot of other minorities, they reap the benefits of what we go through. We fight for rights, we fight for equality. But when it comes down to when these laws and these rules and these grants and these loans come to play, we're the last on the totem pole to really receive those, or to even actually qualify for those, even though we were on the front lines for them. Not to say that other races weren't on the front lines with us, but most of the time we have started these different movements and things like that. Now, um, that is something that needs to be talked about. Now, and that's why you will see now how a lot of the Black community is not really budging when it's coming to, now in 2025 with this whole Trump stuff. It's like the 92% of us that voted to not have this man in office, we're not going out in the front lines. You guys need to go out in the front lines, because we showed you guys voted at your own demise, and now you got to reap the benefits and the consequences of what you're doing. Because if one thing, Black people may be the most hated Black people person on the world, but let me tell you something. Black people know how to grow through struggle. I cannot say that for every other race. I can't say that. Not to say that they can't do it, but you guys need to prove it, because Black people have been proving it since the beginning of the time. And we're just tired. We just don't want to do it. It's like, yo, like, we're tired of going in the front lines and not benefiting. We're tired of going through the front lines and being shitted on. We're tired of being on the front lines and being treated as if we were not on the front lines. And we're tired of being treated, we're tired of going on the front lines and not having laws specifically and policies and procedures specifically for us. Why does it always have to be when we're fighting for something, everybody else needs to be included? No, because African Americans in United States are the only ones that have not really received reparations and don't really have as many laws to protect us as any other race or minority group. I just, it is what it is. Period. Let's just call a spade a spade. Period. Let's just call a spade a spade. So that's just what it is. All right, let's move on from that because I don't want to go into that. I have my own feelings and thoughts about that. Now going on a little further. Um, all right, we're in the town, right? We're in the town. We're with smoke. We're talking about the okay, we talked about the Asian community. We can move on from there. Okay. So they go along. Oh, I do want to point this out here. So I saw somebody break down and they were talking about how the Asian community, but I saw a video off an Asian guy and then a black guy was talking about the Asian community. And one of them was, I can't remember who, one of them was talking about what I just talked about. But another one was talking about how in the movie, was the Asian community really there because they, really wanted the unity, they wanted the community, or were they there for profit? So that's one thing I want to point out in there. I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring that up too. Um, so moving on. So then you have now we're gonna go to Stack and Sammy going into the town, okay? Because actually, no. Let's stay on Smoke real quick. I want to go back and touch on the hoodoo of Annie, who was his lover. I do want to put a dime in here. Hoodoo is not evil. I want you guys to know that hoodoo is naturally often it's dealing with earth, it's being a root worker, a healer, um really protecting, honoring the ancestors. Really, when I say earth worker, meaning like your herbs, the different seasons, when to plant, how to honor and respect Mother Nature. You're praying, you have certain practices that are just sacred and unique between you and spirit and yourself and your ancestors, and really just tapping in and honoring, just existence, right? Of everything from your environment to the people in your life to the people, in the spirit realm and to the the nature and things of that sort. So I do want to put that out there. Hold on. Anyways, so if you guys don't know what hoodoo is, it is a spiritual tradition that emerged through African Americans during slavery, enslaved times. And different it's a practice. Again, it's root work, it's conjure, it's ancestral veneration. There's all different kinds of things. Okay, you could be a man or a woman to participate in this. And a lot of hoodoo practitioners, they are Christians as well. So that is also another misconception that some people be feeling like they're devil worshippers or they don't believe in Christianity. No, it's not. A lot of them use, like the book of Psalms. They say that's the book of spells. A lot of them use that as well. So I just want you guys to do that. Also, too, they're healers as well. They know how to deal with natural herbs that we have on earth, and they know how to make ointments and paste and teas and luxures and things like that. Before we humans evolved, who do you think was healing people? It was the it was the practitioners. It was the healers. The name have changed from time and time again. It is what it is. So and some of those practices too were, going back from like enslaved, it was from enslaved people. It kind of birthed and emerged because again, going back to slavery, they were taking people from different tribes. So what they could pass down on and what could they can say, they kind of created their own kind of spiritual practice and beliefs to try to maintain what they did remember or what they could participate with without having repercussions from their counterparts into the hoodoo practice. So I just want you guys to know that. Okay. A little bit on that. Okay, so now moving on, because I did want to put that out there because there is this negative misconception that hoodoo is like devil worshiper, devil worshiping, and everything like that. And no, it's not. But really, the people that be calling it, you really need to be looking at those people that they're the devil worshippers, because look at their actions. Because how are you going to use the Bible against the slaves and make it seem like God doesn't love us? And you do all this evil shit, not even to African Americans. You did it to your own people before y'all came up with this grand idea to enslave Africans. Anyways, it's a whole nother story. Don't get me started on that. All right. Now I'm trying not one of the things that I'm working on, guys, is trying not to be so emotional when I do my reviews on things because I could feel like it could be a little bit much. Okay, now let's go to Stack and Sammy. Finally in the city. We could get to that point. Oh, it's gonna be a long breakdown, child. I'm almost done though. Okay, so Stack love interest is Mary. So Mary is actually they're at a train station. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get Delta Slim to perform at the juke joint, and he's trying to negotiate with him or whatever. And Mary, she's looking, because she's trying to peep, she's trying to see, if that's her man. We don't know at the time that they had a relationship right away. So she walks up or whatever, and she talks to him. It wasn't really that nice. But their exchange. You could tell there was how they ended things wasn't that great. And so she came back in town because her mother had passed away and she was going through a lot of stuff, and she was in search of like community and really feeling, connected. And so she went back home to, bury her mom and try to, find community with the people that she grew up with and stuff like that. So they dated. So she's a white woman and she dated him. And anyone knows it was illegal back in the day for interracial mixing. You could be killed for that. Okay. So they were definitely in that time period where they could not, openly just be out like that. So that's one thing to point out. So then he basically shuns her away. They get into or whatever. She walks off. She's kind of devastated, heartbroken about that. So then going back to the Delta Slim thing, so he's talking to him, negotiating a deal and everything of that sort. So eventually they get Delta Slim to come. The Stack tells Sammy, he's a good player or whatever. So he tells Delta Slim and he plays him a little something. He's like, hey, don't be playing on my corner. So that's one thing that I want to bring up to you guys, the corner holding. So that's I don't think that's the right term for it, but that's what I'm going to call it. So that is still something that is still present in today's time when you go into African American communities, but not just African American communities, but you will see this in African American communities. You will see people on the corner or African Americans on the corner either selling stuff, um playing music, and there is a whole little society out there, in the streets. They have the whole system. You claim your spot. This is where I am at, and I don't want you impeding or setting up shop where I am at. And that is a real thing in the African American community. I seen it growing up, being a 90s baby, and I continue to see it, and I don't think it'll ever go away. So I thought it was very interesting that I saw it incorporated in this film, and I was like, dang, maybe I should like research a little bit more. Maybe there is like a deeper meaning than me just seeing it, because it's not just because you also can see people standing on the corner begging for money too. So I do want to put there is a negative flip side, but you do have people that do try to hustle. Rather they're selling DVDs, back in the day, mixtapes, music, things like that, selling stuff out of the cars, things like that. That is like a staple in the African American community. We're going to hustle. We're going to find a way to make some money, period. So I thought that was very interesting. I saw that in the movie and I wanted to point that out. But Delta Slim kind of touched on that, how he told the boy don't play nothing on his corner, because he basically was saying that. So then they get Delta Slim or whatever. They're heading to the juke joint place. So on the way to the juke joint, I thought this was very symbolic too. There's prisoners on the side of the road and they're singing. They're also in sync, kind of too. when they are shoveling, and then you have a white officer on the side of the road with, I don't know if he had a shotgun or a gun. He's on a horse, and I kind of just, that kind of is like the staple of what's going on in today's time, when slavery has never went away. It's just been hidden, and it's just been incorporated. And if you know anything about the Reconstruction period, you will know more about that, and how the KKK infiltrated a lot of different organizations and institutions, from the criminal law field, from the financial institution, from education systems, from healthcare systems, etc. Almost everything where you could make a lot of money at, and how you could change and elevate yourself. In real estate, they incorporated themselves as well. They've incorporated themselves, and they infiltrated that to discriminate against African Americans and other minorities over time. Um, that was kind of symbolic on how slavery never went away. It just was, it's utilized, and is being utilized today in the prison system. When you look at the incarceration rates, um, they're primarily African American or minorities in prisons. And when you look at the sentencing, African Americans and other minorities are sentenced, 10 times as more harsher than their counterparts, their white counterparts. And that's just the reality of it. And that is what it is. And then what they have now is they have these corporations. What they'll do is they'll hire these inmates, and to build their stuff and supplies. Sometimes they're even allowed access outside of the prison, but of course they're escorted by prison guards and everything like that, to go work at different locations and things like that. I just recently learned that there's inmates firefighters. I didn't even know that. So they're even fighting fires, forest fires and things like that. So yeah, they'll pay them cents, sometimes couple dollars. They don't get a minimum wage, a good minimum wage. They don't even get minimum wage. And I just see that as a form of slavery, and it is what it is. It's unfortunate, and I don't know if I'll be alive when that ever changes. Anyways, so that is something I thought that was interesting and symbolic that they had in there. Also, too, it was very symbolic how the officer was still on a horse. If you know anything about slavery, they had the guard, or whatever you want to call him. I'm pretty sure that's not what his name was, but anyway, would you call him the slave catcher? Was that the role? I'm not sure if that was the same guy that went out when the slaves ran, so I don't want to call him that either. But anyways, the guy that typically would oversee out in the field when the slaves were picking cotton or whatever they were farming, there were white men on horses, observing. If they were not moving fast enough, they would have the switch and they'll whoop them. Some of them had guns, some of them didn't. So I just thought that was very symbolic on how, okay, these black people are supposed to be free, but they're not really free. They out there still working as slaves, and still being treated in still kind of symbolic ways of slavery. So I thought that was interesting. Now, when they passed those people, Delta Slim actually knew all of those people, and he was telling a story, which I don't remember the story completely, so watch the movie. But basically, all of those people at one point he all knew. And I forgot what happened, but basically, I don't want to say that he was explaining. It was like a incident where it's like wrong place, wrong time overall on how the people got arrested. But he essentially said, like, the officers or whatever, they kind of kept them hostage. Once they figured they could play, they say they could play or whatever, play music. So they played and played and played. So then the officers thought of a great idea to take them on tour, to kind of imprison them and take them on tour. Classic case, try to conquer. Anyways, to take them on tour. And over time they did make some money off of it. And he was saying, I can't remember what the guy name was, but it was one guy, he thought of a bright idea to save up his money and to leave. I forgot what he said he wanted to leave to, but he had a whole bunch of money on him. So he got to the train station. He ran into KKK members. Um, they made up some. They realized, he had a whole bunch of money. Um, the guy being naive or whatever, he's just like, oh, he's gonna get out of the situation. No, he didn't. They made up a lie because they wanted the money, and they hung that man. And not only that, they castrated that man. And to me, I felt like that was very symbolic in tying in, even in today's time, how people could lie on Black people and could do serious harm to them to the point that they could be unalived or they could lose their livelihood. And I thought that was very symbolic. And that is the story of African Americans. And I really wish this current Trump administration would stop trying to erase Black history and what their ancestors did, because that is what your ancestors did. If you guys wanted access to things, you would lie on people. Even going on to the infamous story on Emmett Till, that woman lied on that young man, had him killed. What they did to that young man was despicable. There's countless stories, told and untold, of African Americans just minding their own business. The simple fact that they are uncomfortable because they have something going for themselves, or they just don't like them, or they look at them wrong. They could kill you. That's our story. So I just thought that was very symbolic there. And it tied into today's time and what goes on. I mean, we just got the anti-lynching bill for shit. Let's see if Trump didn't repeal that. Shit. Hold on. Let me see when that bill passed. I can't remember. Okay, it was signed into law in 2022. We're in 2025. We're in 2025. So when I make statements on how African Americans, they have not received the reparations, we don't have the same laws. I mean, it's 2025. Why are we just now having an anti-lynching bill? But according to this current administration, racism doesn't exist. Your ancestors did a lot of positive things. Okay. All right. Now going on. I didn't like that at all. Um, we're going to go into the scene on the conjuring of, we're just going to move on into they're in the juke joint, people starting to arrive, got the fish frying, got music going. Delta Slim is the first person to perform. um and then you get to Delta Slim introduces, which I thought it was respectful. They showed how it works in the music industry, in the music world, how, the veteran typically, will go first or they choose to go last, whatever way they want to go. But they either go first or last. And, Delta Slim, because he's seasoned, he did his music, his songs, and everything like that. Then you introduce the younger talent or the people that haven't put in as much work as the older talent. Okay. It's just a respect thing. He introduces Sammy Moore. And by the way, Sammy is the twins' cousins, by the way. I don't know why I didn't say that in the beginning. So, shit, I missed a big important part. Damn, I missed two parts. Okay, let me write this down so I don't forget it. Um, okay, let's go into this. So then you have Sammy comes on. Sammy plays. By the way, I forgot to mention too. Sammy plays in the car with Stack on their way to the town. By the way, and he just thinks it's the most beautiful thing he's ever heard. So I do want to point that out there. Okay. Now, going back to Sammy when he's playing the juke joint. So the movie does describe how music, it is a gateway to the earthly realm and the spirit realm, and how some people have the gift to open up those realms and to peel back the veil. If you don't know what the veil is, they kind of say it's like this I'm not going to say imaginary, but it's kind of like this invisible, like line between earth spirit and the earthly realm or whatever. So he is playing, and as he is playing, you see the evolution of, there were several stories here. You see him playing, the people's having a good time. Also too, Ryan Coogler, he did his thing. He bought alive a very famous painting. I don't know if I have it. Hold on. I think it might pop up me Googling this. Mm. This is not the photo that I want. Damn. I know I had that photo though because I wanted to buy it. But anyways, he kind of depicted a very famous painting that is it this one? It's not this one, but I do want to show this. It's very similar to this artwork. So I don't know if it's the same artist. So this picture right here. Oh, hold on. This picture right here is very similar to this, but this is not the picture that I'm referring to. But I want you guys to get the feel of what I'm talking about, okay? I want you to get a feel of what I'm talking about, but this is not the photo. Although when you watch the movie, this kind of looked very similar to how it looked like in there. Now that I think about it. Hold on. Give me a second. Okay. So anyways, he's playing the music, and as he's playing, he's one of those spiritually gifted people. Music is his gift. He's playing the music, and the music attracts past ancestors. It brings up spirits of African traditional, movement, dancers, music. It also shows you the evolution of like the future of how Black people were the creators. That was a message in there, Ryan Coogler. We're the creators of a lot of genres that we grow to love, even though in some genres they try to make it seem like it was white discovered and ran. No, it wasn't. They do show that, but they also show, the Asian side too, the different generations. But then they show the darker side of that when you have gifts like that, how you don't only just attract light, you attract dark. And it attracted the vampire. And then the other two he turned out. And then you also see, so they show a depiction on the ceiling, which it didn't happen, by the way, because they're in there. There was no fire at that point, but you see the veil, I would say, burning through, peeling. And then that's when you see the outside scene of the vampires outside listening. They're drawn to it, they're attracted to it. But also too, the people are inside, the building is still standing at that point. But the vampires, when they see it, they see the people dancing, and they see them as their target, their prey. But they also see the building kind of like burnt down and things like that. So that basically was symbolic of saying that, it was over for them people in there. So I do want to point that out there. So you have Sammy Moore. So then Mary comes. She comes into the juke joint or whatever, and the other twin is not happy about it. Smoke isn't happy about it. She says she didn't come there for him. She came to have a good time. Come to find out, it was an even deeper connection. Apparently, her mother raised the twins. So not only that, like they really are family. So she's like, I'm having a good time. And then the people there, they know her. So, they at first they don't recognize her. Then when she explains who she is, she is welcoming into the establishment or whatever. Now, Sammy, he talks to her because, he's like, hey, I don't whatever. And then she's like, boy, I don't care. And then she's like, are you so and so? Like, she's like, oh, let me buy you a drink or whatever. So then they talk, and then Sammy, he looks at her, he's like, what are you? And I thought this was another cue on here. This was another racial cue in here. This was something that happened in the South, and I think it still happens today. Is um when he said that, he wasn't referring to her as a vampire, because at that point they didn't know about the vampires yet. He was referring to her as, I know you are appearing as white, but I see you for more than white. And she said that, I think she said her mother's father was half black. So she has black blood running in her. And in the South, it is a spoken thing and unspoken thing where, and even in during slavery times, where if the children, when the slave masters would have intercourse or aid, mainly aid, the slaves, the black female slaves, they would have children and they would enslave the children. But the children that were fair skinned or appeared to be white, oftentimes they passed as white. That's what they were called, passing. They would give them their freedom and they wouldn't enslave them. And sometimes the mother would be actually like their servant, and they weren't allowed to tell them that they were their mother. So sometimes you'll get the children, they'll be disrespecting them and treating them less than scum, and that's their mother the whole time, and they don't even know it, the children. That's how wicked, slavery was. So you have the passing going on in the African American community and within the white community. So you do have that. Now you do have some where it's like, I don't know, but they still white enough and light enough that they will walk the light. And then you have some, they were like, no, I'm going to just be a light skinned black person because that's what I am. I don't want to claim my whiteness. You have some, and then you have some that they chose to um capitalize off of their whiteness because they didn't want to go through the same things that their parents or their siblings had to go through. They didn't want the black life. They didn't want that. And then some of them, they actually utilize their whiteness to eventually come back and buy off their siblings and their mother or father or whatever. So that's a whole dynamic there too. So I thought that was very interesting because when I looked at her too, I was like, she definitely has like an ethnic look to her. But then I'm looking at her interviews now. I'm like, she don't look like that in the movie. So I don't know if they use to try to darken her a little bit. I don't know. Um, but I thought that was very interesting. I wanted to bring that up because that still applies today to a certain extent. Now, the vampires come out, they're drawn or whatever. So then they try to come and gain entry. They're asking to come in. The black people was like, the twins is at the door, other people's at the door. They're like, I don't know. The hoodoo lady, Annie, she's like, something about her spirit. She's like, something ain't right about these people. So, long story short, you have I thought this was interesting. This was a racial and economic standpoint as well, where essentially the vampires, they trying and trying and trying. They even play their music trying to get in, and they're like, no, you can't come in. And the rightfully so, because the twins was like, nah, I'm not inviting them in there because if somebody look at their woman wrong, then next thing you know, all the clan men gonna come out here and cause trouble. So we just not gonna do that. And then they telling them, they're like, there's plenty of white juke joints, down the road. Why are you coming down here to the black one? And there's two folds here. One, I saw this as white people use this as an excuse if black people obtain ownership or they obtain something, they feel entitled to want to have access to it. And just because you are white does not mean you have access to what we're doing. And just because you could do the same thing that we're doing doesn't mean that I want to share a table or a seat at the table with you. So that was the message that I got from that. I also got the message from just the entitlement of what you see between white people and black people. However, white people have done this to other races as well. But off the premises of this movie, we're going to talk about white and black. So that's what I picked up from this film, from that particular scene. I was like, wow. I was like, they want access to everything. I mean, you see it still in 2025. You've seen it, with the black towns when slavery ended, thriving, successful, the Tulsa, Oklahomas, things like that, the rise of the Black Panthers. Anyways, any type of success that African Americans obtain, white people will find a way to poison it and dampen it and erase it. And that's just the history. Don't like it, y'all shouldn't have did it. Okay, that's just what it is. And that's just the energy that I have until I die at this point, because I'm just like over here when it comes to the people talking about why do black people keep talking about slavery and all the things that they're going through, because it still exists. It still exists. It still exists. Systematic oppression still exists. It exists. It exists. It exists. And you guys lying and erasing history, and it's not going to erase the fact that we still are suppressed and oppressed. That's just what it is. You don't like it, y'all shouldn't have done it, and you shouldn't continue to do it. Period. So, moving right along, because I don't want to raise. That's definitely raising my blood pressure, because I just don't have it with. I just don't have it with individuals that don't understand that. Anyway, so that scene alone gave me that breakdown on it. But then you see where Mary, who is the white woman that's in there, who had the relations, but she also grew up with some of those people too, with Stack or whatever. There, he points out the white vampire, the lead vampire. He points out, he's like, "Well, how's she get in there?" And then they say she's family, and then he says, "Why can't we all be family?" Right? The head vampire is like, "No." The twins like, "No, no, no, there ain't no family, brother." And I took that as, do I want to go there? Jennifer, do you want to go? Okay, I took that moment as black people will welcome, and we still do this to this day. We're some of the most welcoming people that are on this planet. We will invite everybody to the cookout. We will bring in someone into our family. We will do that. But I also took that as they do not like when one of their own goes to another race that they do not seem as equal, and they will do anything that they can to take that person back to make them claim their roots. So what did that lead vampire do? He bit the shit out of, what's her name, Mary, when she went out there to go talk to them. She didn't know they were vampires at the time, but he bit the shit out of her, and then she walked back up in that thing when she got invited back in there, and then she attacked the twin. But that was just a classic case of that's what they do. They don't like that. And that was the whole thing of why the interracial mixing couldn't happen legally. Which is, don't you think that's a crazy thing? Y'all slave masters was raping the slaves, but then y'all made it so it's okay to rape the people, but it's not okay to be in a loving relationship with them. You see how twisted that is? That's crazy. Not only that, y'all have babies with them. African Americans are animals and we're beasts and we're all this stuff, but you was having sex with the beast. So what does that say with y'all? I just, another day, another day for another story. Because I just, again, I'm up to here when it's come to racism. I am like up to here. Anyway, so she bites him. She bites the shit out of Stat. So he down there. First of all, Sammy walks in there. She think he doing a little hanky panky. He opened the door, but then at that point she was. But then I guess he left her. He got Smoke, because Smoke was looking for him or whatever. He got him, and then they went in there, and she was biting the shit out of him. He was just twitching and stuff. Anyways, Smoke just automatically shoots her. He shoots her up, shoots her up. First, she like falls on the floor, but then a couple seconds later, she gets up and then she says she's gonna kill all of y'all and everything like that. She runs out. So then at that point, they're like, what the fuck is this? What's going on in here? So his brother is dying. He's still alive, but he's dying, and he's like, telling him stuff. He's like, I love you and all this stuff. And Smoke is like, no, like you the best part of me. And I felt so bad because I'm like, oh my God, imagine losing your sibling. First of all, they're grown. They're lucky enough to have that relationship, especially due to like their alleged like life, their reckless life that they had, or sketchy life that they had together. But imagine like that's your best friend, that's your shadow. And how I mentioned earlier in this video, how twins are interconnected. um like, do you know how like that's like a piece of your soul being taken away? So I felt for like I really felt that energy. Like they really did a really good job. Michael B. Jordan did a really good job playing two characters, by the way, and it really was just one person. So I just felt like that was just very beautiful, and it just very convincing, this whole movie with everything. Um but then they locked the door, right? At first they was like, don't move or whatever. So Annie, who is Smoke's woman or lady, she's like, I don't she's like looking, she's trying to decipher everything that's going on. And like she was asking about like the invitation, and then she talks about, this isn't hate. So I don't know if you guys know anything about that, because if you're not spiritual, you're not going to know about it. I also had to learn about hate too, but I knew about vampires and folklore and hoodoo and all that other stuff, but I didn't know about hate, which is kind of embarrassing because I do have roots in the South. um Neither her nor there. So hate is actually a practice that is done in the South. And it is done to actually it's like a form of protection. So hate is a southern U.S. folklore. So a hate is a ghost or evil spirit. It's particularly those associated with the Gilligichi culture of the Low Country. So the term is a variant of haunt and is often used in the contents of southern superstitions about restless spirits. So haunts are believed to be restless and may not have fully passed on to the afterlife, sometimes lingering to cause mischief or even harm. So that is what I hate. And what they would do is they would paint. The tradition would be to paint the porch ceilings and door frames a pale blue green, often called hate blue. And this is a way to ward off hates. The belief is that the color confuses spirits, making them think it's the sky or water which they cannot cross. So I just want you guys to know a little bit about that. Also, too, that really made me think of, no, I don't need to tell y'all too much about my spiritual stuff. Anyways, it just opened up my eyes. This movie definitely, if you are a spiritual person, it will open up your eyes. Okay. It will definitely open up your eyes deeper than what they should already be if you are in tuned. So I want you guys to know that. So she talked about a hate. It's not a hate. And then she said they're vampires. She doesn't have that much experience with vampires. So what they do is the people that is most of the people left out to like leave or whatever. They said the party is over, but the vampires was already out there. So child, they didn't bit up all them people that was in the club. They all outside. Um, so then you have the people that is left in there, which is like the main cast. And they go around and they say, you need to eat a clove of garlic. So they all eat a clove of garlic to see if anyone changed. Okay. Um, they didn't change. Nobody changed in there. Okay, there was no vampires in there. Now it's crazy because they found a guy that was on the floor. They thought he was bit by a vampire, but come to find out, I think it was alcohol or something. Child, he was knocking on the door. He was like, "Hey," because he saw the vampires was outside. He knocking on the door, knocking on the door. They took their sweet time, and he ended up getting bit by one of the vampires. Child, so they could have saved that man, but they didn't. So that part happened. Now, then you have, oh, this is such a long deep dive. I should have made this two parts instead of continuing it. Uh so you have the vampires at this point, they come into attack. They trying to get invited in, they're doing all kind of mischievous stuff. They talk about, or they show the nature of how vampires are, how they will try to find your weaknesses are and use that to their advantage, and they're very cunning at first, but once the cunningness wears off, then they're vicious. They're predators. At the end of the day, that's what vampires are. They're predators. But one thing with vampires, they stalk their prey too. So they're either going to attack you on sight, or they're going to stalk you. And some of the people that got bit, that are their loved ones is still in the barn that's not bit, they use that to their advantage, and they start to say things, like the lead vampire, he ends up saying like some of the thoughts that the wife, because the husband ended up getting bit, the Asian husband, what she likes. And he's being very sexual and gruesome. And sexuality is big in the vampire folklore and stuff. The very sexual creatures is very, very devious, very sexual, very sneaky, conniving, all of that stuff. Have a lot of different powers as well. He also has a flying scene as well. So, which lets me know he was a very ancient vampire, because not all vampires can fly. You have to be ancient, or you have to have Akasha blood in your bloodline. If I'm saying it correctly, okay. Just from my experience knowing vampires, one of my superstitious dark fae that I do like is vampires, so I do know a lot about them. So anyways, um they're out there dancing, gallivanting, the vampires. What I found very interesting, and this is something that is not explored often, and not Michael, Ryan Coogler really put this on the map, is I didn't think of this. And I have Irish roots too. That lead vampire, which his name is Remrick, he is actually an Irish vampire. And he starts singing in Irish tunes and saying folklore, and they're outside, the vampires knows the songs and everything like that. And I'm just like, damn, there's some vampire. I don't know why I didn't think that there was no Irish vampire folklore, because folklore is in every culture. And creatures, sometimes it's the same creature, just a different name. So I was just like, but that's the first time I really paid attention to it. I was like, the only other movie that I know, and you guys let me know in the comments, in movies, TV shows, even short stories, what other films and movies and short stories and TV shows do you know where they talk about Irish vampires? Besides, I know in True Blood they did, because I was a big True Blood fan. I know that, but I can't think of any other circumstances where they talk about Irish, or the Celtic. Um, I can't think of any vampires. So I was just like, oh, let me look up folklore, which I did. And there's actually two stories. There's one about a male vampire, and there's one about a female vampire, that people still, in that culture, they still believe in that superstition. So, and then there's a third one too, but that one's not really talked about that much. But the second one is kind of gruesome. Should I tell y'all the story behind that? I don't think y'all research it yourself. Okay, just know there's three famous stories about vampires in the Irish culture that you should know about. Um, the woman one is kind of tragic but sad, but then it turns kind of gruesome. So I don't, ugh, it's kind of really disturbing. Um, so, anyways, they're outside gallivanting, doing all their thing and stuff. So then it gets to a point where, oh, the Asian lady, she invites the damn vampires in, because she's telling the people, she's like, you know what, they threatening my daughter, my husband outside, and all this other stuff. And I just felt like that kind of was like symbolic to black people. It's like you can't invite everyone to the motherfucking cookout, because when pressure gets the pressure in, sometimes they will flip on your ass. And that was just a classic case of her flipping. And I just felt like that was a cultural thing we needed to look at. Um, just be careful who you associate yourself with. So, because at the end of the day, the people that was still standing were the black people at the end, when you really think about it. But then you find out later on. Anyways, I'll tell you guys later. Um, so then they're fighting, they end up coming in because now they have access, because that's another thing too. I wanted to point out to you guys how spiritual that was. Not only just vampires, but just evil in general, going all the way from like Sammy, because not only Sammy, Delta Slim also said how um the devil has knocked on his door too, and if you know the story about Lucifer, you would know that he was one of the most beautiful angels, and he was in charge of music. He will make some of the most beautiful music that, you know no anyone has ever heard. So I mean, it's no coincidence that when you play music, or you play into, they say all the time, pay attention to the music that you're listening to, the lyrics that you're listening to, because it's frequencies, and it controls, what you open your soul up to. Okay, because music is a portal. It will open things up, good or bad. So, be very cautious about that. So and some things, it's a duality. It opens up both. It opens up positive things and negative things. And some, it opens up a veil, so you got to be very careful with it. But even when you research different cultures and things like that, a lot of different cultures, ancient practices, they deal with different frequencies and things, from like sound bowls, to drums, like to different instruments too, because you could conjure up things as well. So I just want you guys to know that from the spiritual standpoint as well. Um, Now, okay, they're inside fighting or whatever. He was okay. Let's go into, because I don't want to keep going on and on. Okay, let's go into Remnick. Remnick is really, he was drawn to Sammy's music because, again, he has the gift of dancing between the veils, pulling the veils back. Okay, he was drawn to the music. That's what made him come to the shack. Now, I do want to speed this, rewind this up to the beginning. I should have talked about this in the beginning. I don't want to forget, since we're talking about Sammy, we're talking about the devil being called. Well, I shouldn't say the devil. We're talking about the vampire, the ancient vampire, to come to the shack, right? Now, this, you could tell this story, or Sammy's guitar is linked to the folklore deal with the devil. I don't know if you guys know this ancient deal with the devil. I did pull it up. Hold on. Give me a second. And I do need to explain this real quick. Okay, we could pull that one back. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you guys real quick. Okay, let me share this. Okay. So this is Robert Johnson. So he is apparently the man who sold his soul at the crosswords. So typically this refers to the blues legend Robert Johnson. So the legend goes that he made a deal with the devil at a crossroads in Mississippi in exchange for his guitar playing abilities. Now, since I kind of know this story, I don't really need to read all this, but I want you guys to know this is actual fact. I shouldn't say factual, but this is a superstition that is in the spiritual community, and in southern, and in the music industry as well. Now, this man, Robert Johnson, he apparently could not play. He could not play. That was his passion, though. He would play. He would travel from town to town. He wasn't a great player, and he came across the devil and he sold his soul to the devil and got the guitar. And mysteriously, he came back into the towns, his hometown, and the different towns he traveled at, and he knew how to play amazingly. And again, remember how I said the devil was, the lead person in music, could make the most beautiful melodies, songs, and things like that. So this, I could tell they Ryan Coogler kind of took from that religious folklore, or spiritual folklore, and incorporated in there. So I saw this TikTok and I wished I did save it, but I don't know if I could pull it up. Anyways, this woman was talking about generational curses, which I'm going to talk about it too. But I didn't think about this, so I do want to bring it up. um, she talked about how she thinks, because the twins gave Sammy, who was their little cousin, the one that was playing the guitar, gave him it, and then they said that it was from a famous jazz musician or something. And at the time he didn't know that was a lie, but he finds out at the end. So I think, and I agree with the woman when she says it, she thinks their daddy, because their daddy ended up getting killed. She thinks their daddy was that folklore, what I just told you about. And when Sammy, because that's passing down generational curses, allegedly. Okay. We don't know if this is true, but the lady, when she explained it, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So when Sammy started playing it, and it's no coincidence, because sometimes when the way our ancestry work or our DNA work, we have certain gifts that it's inherited to us, right? And sometimes one generation is not, they're the start of it, but they're not the best in it. But then the future generations get better and better, and then somebody always ends up being the breakout star. They make it big, they're just great, they're phenomenal, the stars aligned, they're going to be a star, they're going to be famous, they're going to be well known, they're going to put their family or their name on the map, right? And she was explaining that she feels like that folklore, that was their daddy, and that they passed that guitar down, and that guitar was given by the devil. And because what happened is, I missed that part too, I didn't explain that to y'all. Anyways, the twins' daddy ended up getting killed. One of the twins killed the daddy, and the daddy is related to Sammy, so they're actually first cousins, they're blood cousins. But that explains why the daddy was talking about the devil with that guitar, and how he was so adamant about him not playing that dang guitar, and how the guitar, he would have it up by his podium in the front by the Bible, preaching the word. So her synopsis or breakdown of it really made sense to me, and I was like, that makes perfect sense. So due to the devil not being able to collect his soul, that demon or whatever, the vampire, was sent to collect the soul, I guess, because it triggered it. He had the spiritual gift, he had the veil, he was able to come between worlds. He welcomed in, I'm not going to say he welcomed in all of that energy, but he was able to gain them access to the earthly realm. So it made perfect sense for the veil to come down, and how he was linked to that superstition of Robert. Okay. um let's go back to the vampire. Dang, I'm almost done. Yes. Okay, so they're all fighting, then the twin is trying to convince the brother, because the twin, Stack, where's the smoke? Stack ends up getting, he ends up living, guys. He gets turned out to be a vampire. So he's trying to convince his brother. He's like, hey, blah blah blah. This was actually before they start fighting, so I should have said that. He's trying to convince his brother, like, we could be together forever. And like his woman is like, no, like, we just can't do that. That's not your brother no more. That's not him. But Smoke, he loves her, but he also is like, that's his brother, that's his twin brother. They always did everything together. Um, and there is a moment of weakness, but he doesn't give in. Although I should mention too, before the Asian lady welcomed all the people in, Um, what's her name? Annie? Yeah, Annie. She tells Smoke, she's like, if I get bit, you make sure you unalive me before I turn. And he don't want to think of that. He's like, no, you're gonna survive. And she already knows because she puts down her hoodoo tools, her I never could say that word right. Devianation tools. Um, she puts them down. She kind of reads. She knows what's gonna happen. And she knows he's not gonna live either. So they both pass away too, by the way. Spoiler alert. But I told y'all don't come up in here if you don't want to be a spoiler alert. So she's like, someone's waiting on the other side for you. And I love that because it brought the spiritual side of how just because your loved one passed away in the fleshly, in their flesh, in the earth realm, does not mean that they're not there for you and does not mean you can't reconnect with them. And that was very important. And who she was referring to was their child that passed away. So which we'll get to that point part two. But anyway, so she ends up getting bit and he has to kill her. He kills her before she turns or whatever. And the reason why she did that too, she didn't want her soul entrapped, and also too, just being a hoodoo practitioner and having that knowledge. Every time the vampire bit someone, the lead vampire, they all were able to gain their memories, access to things, and she didn't want that vampire having access to her spiritual stuff. She didn't say that, but I peeped that. Um, which was kind of like a hidden message to Black people. Stop sharing our practices to everyone. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to help people, but really know who to help and who to not help. A lot of hidden messages to the African American community and just the others too for awareness. So she dies or whatever. Then you have the twins, they fighting upstairs. And I thought he killed his brother with the stake, but he didn't. Because at the end of the movie, you find out he never really died. But so the people go outside, most of them end up getting killed. And Sammy goes outside. He's trying to run away from the vampire. The vampire wants to bite him because again, every time he bites them, he gains not only their soul, but he gains access to their memories, their thoughts, their feelings, their practices. If they have any magical abilities, he gains that. So he's like talking. They're in a pool of water, which is a famous picture too. In most African American, especially Southern African American homes, you'll see a famous like baptism photo in the African American homes. But anyways, they're in the water. Sammy starts preaching the word. The vampire, and this is a correlation too, because vampires they're not birthed to be evil. At one point they were human. um However, it was a correlation. Hold on, pause, because they are not about to do this to me. No, they're not. Okay, sorry. I listened to a lot of spiritual music and stuff like that, and there was this beautiful songstress that came on, and she don't play about her videos. And no, I did not be on here for almost 2 hours for her to get some coins. So no, thank you. She had to come off immediately. Um, so they're in the water. Sammy starts praying, preaching the word, and then the vampire's preaching the word with them too. So saying the word with them too. And that was just a sign of saying, like evil, they know good, they know bad too. But anyway, so he's preaching to him, but he doesn't realize, I don't think the vampire realized he's turning that water into holy water, because holy water is water that's prayed over. So anyways, and then when you're anointed, that's holy water. God is going to make sure that water cannot sustain evil in there. Now, what I was kind of worried about is Mississippi is alligators. I was like, dang, because I was thinking, I was like, oh my God, is the alligator going to eat one of them? What's going to happen? But so he's praying or whatever, and it gets to a point, he hits the dang vampire in the head. and then a big chunk of the guitar is like in the vampire head. Mind you, the other vampires, their heads end up getting hurt. They screaming and stuff. Mind you, it's about the sun is about to rise too. So they are like they're out there in the water. And then he's the vampire is like telling him stuff or whatever. And I can't remember what else. I can't. Why am I forgetting this as I'm talking about this? He hits him in the head. Oh, and then that's kind of what ties into that superstitious story that I told you about Robert, because what that lady was saying in her video, because I was like, oh, I was like, yeah, that kind of is what they're talking about. But once that guitar broke, and he wouldn't give him access, because remember, vampires need access, and this also was a story between evilness too. It has to have access. It could come close to your space. Sometimes it can even come into your home, but it can't fully penetrate you until you allow it to penetrate you. Okay, or possession, what I should say. So it could fuck with you, but it can't really get you until you give in, or you allow it access some kind of way. Anyways, so well, you give it permission. So the other twin, the one that lives, that's not the vampire, gets in the water and stakes him. Does he stake him? Yeah, he stakes him. Then the man, he like, they all scared in the water. That's when you see the image. They're in the water and they looking all scared. Well, not scared. They just holding each other in the movie. And hold on, do I have that picture of them? This photo right here. This is when, hold on, give me 1 second. Let me show y'all. This is the moment I'm telling you. He's burning up. The vampire is burning up. Okay, they in the water, they freaking out, they doing all of this. Um, so after that happens, it's kind of pretty much the end of the movie, but not really. You have, which I thought was another symbolic thing. So the vampires all die. They don't think to go run back into the juke joint or whatever. They all die. So the morning comes. Um, what's his name? I'm sorry, because the twins is it's so hard for me. I have to like really think about it. It's Stack. Smoke died, right? Shit. I hope I wasn't saying the names wrong. Oh, Smoke. Shit, I think I was saying the names wrong. I'm gonna have to play it back and watch. If I said the twins' name wrong, I apologize. I'm just catching it now. Okay, so Smoke is the twin that lives. He's still human. But he realizes, because the vampires let it slip, that the other vampires, before they converted all the people that went to the juke joint, because he had two people, the sharecroppers, remember? They were actually the nephew, the husband was the nephew of, I'm not sure if he said Grand Wizard or whatever, one of the leader clansmen. So that gave him heads space on, all right, these fuckers about to come back over here. And he told him when his brother was alive, y'all ain't about to come back here with no clansmen, right? So they do, they show up. So they're like knocking on the door, doing everything. Mind you, this goes back to, they talk about a story where the twins, they were in war, so they know how to shoot guns and everything like that. So, which is another piece. I don't want to really go into that, but anyways, you guys could know, look up African American soldiers compared to white soldiers and how they were treated when they fought wars back in the day. I don't know if it's still going on now, but it definitely is something in our military history that, it happened. Anyway, so the Klansmen come back. They're looking for him. They're like, "Oh, ain't nobody here." Of course, they calling him the N word and everything like that, calling him and all this. So he's out in the field. So he got guns. He's shooting them and shit, shooting them from the field. So, because he told them, "Don't come back. You took the money," and that was like another thing that I do want to talk about that happened oftentimes in the African American community. They would, do what's right, save up their money, try to buy a piece of land, a property, and the white people that made those deals, it was faulty. They never had any intentions to really give the African Americans the land or that product or whatever that was in the first place. So he ends up unaliving all of them. And the last person, which was, I don't know if that was a grand wizard or whoever, or was the lead person of that chapter of that area, but he ended up, trying to plead with him, saying, I got money, I got all that. Mind you, during him killing all the other people, he did get shot, and it was a fatal shot, but it wasn't one like right away. So he was kind of like in between the veil of the earthly realm and the spirit realm. So he was he shot the man. He did shoot the man. He was on the floor, and then he was like, "You got a cigarette?" So then he gives him a cigarette. He's smoking a cigarette, lights a cigarette, but then he sees his lovely woman, and then he sees the baby, their baby, and she's in all white, and she's just like, I don't want that cigarette. I don't want the smoke on the baby. And he's like, can I hold her? All of this stuff. And it was just such a beautiful scene. But it was a message. Before he crossed over, he said he was going to, well, not, he didn't say anything. He shot the fuck out of that Klansman. And I don't know if y'all really got that if you was African American, but what I took that as, white, again, and I want you guys to realize I have white blood piercing through my veins. So um that does not mean that I'm not even gonna claim my ancestors were a part of that, but I'm pretty sure there were some. But the white people that I do know, it was love, but I'm pretty sure there was some slave issues as well. However, what I'm going to say is that was a classic case of black people. This movie toyed with several different aspects black people need to think about. They need to think about, one, stop inviting everyone to the cookout, because you need to know if people, when shit hit the fan, are they actually really going to be down. Two, stop believing everything that someone is going to say to you that's not necessarily true. Really scope them out, know who you dealing business with. And three, would African Americans be better if we were segregated and we were guaranteed to be segregated from our white counterparts? I'm not going to go to as far as other races. I'm just going to say just white people. Were we better off segregated? And when you look at it, when we really branched off, we were. So, which they didn't like that either. So they figured, oh, we're going to integrate. And then this is how we could officially just dominate, indefinitely. I mean, so far it's not broken, and they continue to strengthen it. So we could continue to be suppressed. Um, but it also was a classic case of, the only way you're going to let people know not to F with you, you don't. There's actually several parts in the movie as I'm saying this. You don't put a band-aid on something. You get to the root of the cause. So the root of the cause is, he told that man, you better not come back over here with no Klansmen, or me and my brother gonna kill y'all. And he did just that, and by himself. And he unalived them. And I also got a deeper message on that is, Should the Black Panthers be revived? And I also got a message of being nice isn't always, you can't be Martin Luther King. You're not going to get a whole bunch done. You're going to have some Malcolm X in there and maybe more Malcolm X to get things done and to have them permanently stay that way. Um that's the nicest way I think I could say it. Now, going on to the final conclusion, the last story or message for me is generational curses. Generational curses in every race. However, in the African American community, as I mentioned earlier at the start of this video, I feel like the African American community needs to be a lot better when it comes to supporting our children and our future generations and stop perpetuating what the remnants of slavery, what it has done to our people and the thinking pattern and the access to things. And, it's, I could just talk about so many different things that we need to work on collectively. However, Sammy broke a generational curse. His father did not want him to play music. However, you cannot stop someone from, God's gift was him having that gift to play and to sing. And the father should have realized that, even though it could have been tied onto that Robert, superstition or whatever. And now he was saying it was linked to the devil and all of that. But that's a whole nother story, because there's some church people, they feel like if you just do music, that's linked to the devil anyway. I'm like, but y'all singing in the church too. So, hey, sometimes Christian pick and choose what they want to deal with. However, he made the right decision for him. He left Mississippi. He took the guitar because he went back to church. He fulfilled the promise. He told his daddy he was going to come back the next day. He had the strings from the guitar across his face. He was all bloody. The daddy was saying, come to the pulpit, put the guitar down, all of that. He didn't do that. You see him driving off out of Mississippi with that guitar. Then you see it fast forward. So that was him following his dreams. That's what he wanted to do. His life was not in the church. And sometimes you have to leave people behind in order to accomplish your dream, because your foundation, your safety net, that could be just as bad as you not living your full potential and living your purpose, could be just as bad as not doing it at all. You living a life you don't want to live. I think that's selfish. And parents do that a lot in the African American community. Again, it's another racist too, but I'm African American, so I'm speaking about it. I've seen it. It's happened to me. I've seen it happen to others. Um, I've seen it. I also see it heavily in the like African, like I'm talking about Africans. I've seen that. I've seen it in the Middle Eastern cultures as well. Mexicans are a little bit more lenient, or Hispanics are a little bit more lenient, but I still see it in there. Asians for sure, I've seen it. So I've seen it in some islanders. It happens in all, but since this movie is African American, I just wanted to stay on that. But just stay your path, follow your path. That's what I got from that. But anyway, fast forward from years back. So he's being a famous musician, and then he runs into, the twin and the lover. What's her name? Mary. Yeah, Mary and Stack. And you know, he's like, I thought she died and all this other stuff. He's like, nope, my brother made me promise that I would, basically not harm you. And he kept his promise. And that kind of humanized vampires, because they kind of made it seem that vampires was cold. They didn't really have no soul. It wasn't them anymore. But there is a part, when you look at vampires do have their soul, but their coldness and the darkness that surrounds them is kind of like the soul is not vibrant. It's kind of like a disconnect from source in a sense, from light energy, I would say, to a certain extent. It's heavily dark and cold. So, but you still have your core self there. So, anyways, that ends up being the ending. So he does meet him. At first, he seems like he's afraid when he meets him, but no, he actually is cool. That he plays him a tune before he goes. Stack lets him know he doesn't have that much long to live. They could offer him to be a vampire. He don't want to be no vampire, and that pretty much is the ending. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna watch this back, and I'm pretty sure there's gonna be times I'm be like, "Oh my god, why did I say that?" Or "Oh my god, I forgot to say that." But let me go through these notes real quick, so I don't. Let's just see if I forgot anything. Oh, I do want to mention this one thing. When this is before Stack turns into a vampire, Stack and Smoke kind of get into it, and Annie gets into it because when they open up the juke joint, some of the people, they don't have like cash. They're like paying in like grocery tokens and things like that with cash. And Smoke is, damn, I was saying the wrong name because I put Stack right here. Fuck. Smoke, excuse my language. So Smoke was they were talking, and they were basically saying that, some of these people, they worked hard, how it is. Um and they just trying to get by. They just want to have a good night. They want to have a good time. Come on, let's create that space for them. Come on. And there was like, it's opening night and everything like that. And Smoke is like, I'm trying to make a business here. I'm not trying to give out no handouts. But I found that as kind of like a thing in the African American community that applies today. It's like, um, you have some African Americans, they don't want to patronize with other African Americans because they feel like they gouge too much. Um, but it could be one or two things. It could be they gouge too much, or it could be, have you thought about that their counterparts don't, their suppliers, their loan, them workers, all of that, having access to certain information, um, is 10 times as more than their counterparts. So they have to offset it some kind of way. So maybe that's why the price is high. So I looked at that as a message too, on like, we don't have to gouge. We could find a way to barter within our community. So I just wanted to point that out too. Um the twins' father, I talked about that. Okay. All right, that pretty much is it, I think, for now. If I do a part two, I'll do it. No, I ain't doing no part two. This is 2 hours. All right. I love you guys. I hope you guys enjoy this. I will see you guys soon. Thank you so much. Make sure you like the video, share the video, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.